Many modern dietary ethics operate on a very specific moral boundary. The prevailing logic is that we avoid harming animals because they actively process information about their environment and have the capacity to suffer. This boundary relies on a strict biological assumption. We grant moral weight to animals because they possess central nervous systems and brains. Plants and fungi, lacking these specific organs, are treated as biological automatons, living machines running on basic chemical reactions. A 2024 experiment at Cornell University challenged that assumption directly. Researchers placed a small robotic chassis under an ultraviolet beam, and the machine independently processed the sensory input and steered itself into the shadows. A pleurotus, an ordinary oyster mushroom, generated those motor commands. It processed the light stimulus and drove the chassis to safety, navigating a physical body without the use of a brain. If a brainless fungus can pilot a physical vehicle away from a threat, our metric for sentience is under question. Our definition of which organisms process information may rely entirely on an arbitrary bias toward creatures that happen to have faces. In 2022, research by Professor Andrew Adamatsky mapped out how these organisms communicate. Underground mycelium, the root-like networks of fungal threads, actively transmit electrical signals across vast distances to share information. This comparison shows the structural similarity between these systems. Adamatsky identified up to 50 distinct electrical signal patterns within the fungi, a vocabulary that matches the way animal nerve cells transmit data. That electrical capability extends beyond basic communication into predatory behavior. We see this in Ophiocordyceps, a genus of parasitic fungi that targets insects. The cordyceps infects a host ant and systematically hijacks its neurology. It forces the insect to leave its colony, climb to a specific elevated position, and clamp its jaws onto a leaf. Finally, the fungus erupts from the ant's body to disperse its spores. To pull that off, the fungus must possess a biological understanding of the ant's motor control systems. It physically interfaces with the host's neurology and synchronizes its eruption with precise environmental conditions. An organism that takes over another animal's brain and steers it through goal-directed actions exhibits neurological capability. This behavior mirrors the complex survival tactics we previously reserved for animals. This high-level processing happens on a massive scale through the Wood Wide Web. Forest mycelial networks constantly calculate where to allocate resources, funneling nutrients to struggling trees and transmitting chemical warnings the moment an insect attack begins. Researchers used a map like this to test the processing power of a slime mold. Phaserum polycephalum is a single-celled amoeboid organism that navigates its environment to find food. Scientists placed oat flakes at major population centers to see how the mold would reach them. Without a single neuron, the slime mold calculated the shortest paths between the food sources. It recreated the Tokyo rail network, a spatial optimization problem it solved faster than the human algorithms designed to build the transit system. Plants themselves execute similar biological calculations. Mimosa pudica is a creeping shrub that folds its leaves inward when physically touched or dropped as a defense mechanism against herbivores. But the plant can analyze its environment over time. If dropped repeatedly without causing physical harm, the Mimosa pudica stops closing its leaves. It exhibits habituation, a form of biological learning where an organism remembers a stimulus is harmless and adapts its physical response. The slime mold solving a maze and the plant adapting to repeated stimuli show clear environmental awareness. They possess adaptive memory and problem-solving skills that challenge our definitions of intelligence. This chart compares the quantity of active routing nodes in a single hectare of mycelium to the neural density of a chicken's brain. We afford the chicken moral protection because we recognize its ability to process its environment and feel distress. Yet we harvest the fungal network without a second thought. Our ethical frameworks are largely built on visual empathy. This is the human tendency to assign internal lives only to organisms that look structurally similar to us, creatures with forward-facing eyes, mouths, and recognizable expressions. Because plants and fungi do not have faces, we bypass their complex electrical vocabularies and their learned behaviors. We label them as objects rather than active subjects. If the capacity to process information determines moral status, then a mycelial network that solves routing problems and interfaces with foreign neurology demonstrates a level of computational complexity that mirrors the animals we currently protect. The rigid line we draw between a sentient creature and a non-sentient biological machine is invisible in nature. Cognition exists on a sliding scale rather than a binary switch. Every organism, from the largest network to the smallest plant, is actively calculating its survival and processing the reality of its environment.